Welcome everyone to our FlyZero webinar. For those of you who don't know me, I am Gary Elliott, Chief Executive of the Aerospace Technology Institute. As you can see, like so many of us, I am working from my home office. And whilst we have seen much negative impact across the aviation as a result of the COVID pandemic, there is opportunity, and I very much see FlyZero in that respect. As you will all know, FlyZero was officially launched at this year's virtual Farnborough Air Show by Secretary of State Alex Sharma, and the ATI is, as always, delighted with government's ongoing support and encouragement, particularly as we go through this period of challenge and opportunity. The ATI has been working on the opportunity to build something ambitious for some time, and a lot of detailed work has been performed in the background to allow us to move on to the next phase of recruiting the very best team to deliver the feasibility phase of FlyZero. This is a super exciting and ambitious project looking to determine the path and the technologies required to achieve zero carbon emission flight by 2030. For that, we have the support of the recently announced Jet Zero Council, sponsored by the Prime Minister, with their encouragement to be bold. To make the first phase a success, we need to bring together the best capabilities and people from across the UK. And today is about commencing that process. Bringing together the best possible team, and those lucky enough to participate will have a lot of fun in this very much transformative project. That's enough from me for now. I'll pass you now over to James McMickey and the team for details on how you can get involved too. Thank you.
Hello, I'm James McMickey, the Chief Strategy Officer of the ATI. During this section of the presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about the strategic context behind the FlyZero project. So let's look at some of the strategic context behind FlyZero. The first point I want to start with is around the environment. And the sector needs to look at how it can radically reduce its greenhouse gas emissions now. If you take the IPCC scenarios in order to achieve 1.5 or even 2 degrees global warming by the end of the century, and overlay the trajectory for aviation in terms of CO2 output, then the sector is on track by 2050 to become a major, if not the major, contributor to CO2 emissions. Today, it's only 2%, but other sectors will find it easier than aerospace to reduce their carbon emissions. Aerospace is one of the hardest to do this, as we all know. You are really operating against the limits of physics when you fly. But flying is really important. It enables people, ideas, goods to travel around the world. It's important to our lives. And so the sector needs to find ways in which it can continue to be sustainable. The good news is there are lots of technologies, of course, that the sector can go after. They're not straightforward, they're highly complex, and how they trade off against one another is also very unclear. Within that suite of technology options, one potential route is to produce aircraft that indeed emit no carbon emissions in flight. And we know that's possible. Indeed, the ATI program is funding a number of projects that are looking at technologies that can do this. But the question is to what extent these can address the environmental challenge and what technical, economic and commercial issues stand in the way to doing it. In effect, how big a dent can an aircraft of that type make in the industry's environmental challenge? And when you look at the sorts of aircraft and the sorts of technology involved, it's clear that this will be a potentially defining moment for the industry. For the past decades, the industry has been developing a dominant form of technology incrementally and doing so very effectively. What we're looking at here is potentially an entirely new set of capabilities that will require new industrial footprint, new industrial capability to be put in place and invested in. So it's quite a defining moment for the industry. As I've emphasized really at the beginning of this chart, we can't wait to tackle the challenge. Indeed, despite the economic shock, if you look at projections of how long it may take the sector to recover, which is between really 2 and 4 years, that could be as much as 10% of the time we have between now and 2050 in order to address these challenges, these sustainability challenges. So we can't just wait until the economics recovers. We've got to carry on now, if not accelerate our efforts towards achieving this ultimate goal of net zero flight. So the UK, we feel, needs a vision that inspires and drives that action on sustainable aircraft during this period, but a vision that will survive longer term as well. And that's what FlyZero is about. And its vision is to realize zero carbon emission commercial aircraft by the end of the decade, to make a breakthrough on that technology. So let's talk about the specific project aims. And this project really represents the first step on the journey towards the FlyZero vision, which I talked about. There are three key buckets that I want to emphasize in terms of objectives for the project. The first is to understand all the major technical and commercial issues in bringing this type of aircraft to market. And what we've seen is there are obviously good projects out there with a lot of merit that have looked at particular angles on the subject. But very few of them, if any at all, have looked completely comprehensively at the challenge from an engineering, technical perspective, but also from a commercial one, whether you're in the supply chain or an operator, or from a sustainability lens. And that's what we want to do here. And the other thing is to move the level of thinking, the maturity of thinking, on to a much greater level. We want to come out of this with a depth of understanding that gives us even greater confidence on what the pathway ahead is. The second one is to then establish the industrial and economic business case for future investments. Obviously for ATI, this is really important because we lead a large research and technology funding program for the UK. And the outputs of this project will then go on and inform and help with overseeing those investment decisions. So it's got really important implications. Also for investors and businesses out there thinking of progressing into this space. And it might be that some of that hinges on future policy or legislation in order to make the economics stack up. And so that's equally important here. The outputs of the project may have a very important bearing on future policy setting. And then finally, to sustain and really develop key capabilities for the sector. As emphasized under point 1, this is about developing even greater knowledge and understanding of the potential technologies that could be used to achieve zero carbon emission flight. And that requires bringing together a whole host of very specialist skills that are hard to develop. And obviously during this period, we're very concerned about the loss of those skills and capabilities. So really this project represents an opportunity to develop them further for the benefit of the industry. And the insights that flow from this project are going to be very valuable to aerospace. And that should really position the UK well for recovery post-crisis, to get back on the innovation agenda and to drive technologies forward with greater confidence. So why is the ATI taking a lead? Why is it playing this role? It's quite unusual for us to do this. Well, there's a number of reasons, and I wanted to highlight some of the key ones on this page. First of all, this is strategic research that has important implications for a very wide range of stakeholder industry, academia, government, investors, that we feel needs to be delivered at a national level by a national effort, and that the insights from that work need to find their way to a whole range of stakeholders in order to enable those stakeholders to move faster, to make progress, to help them. Secondly, the work needs independence from any individual industrial interest in order to be delivered objectively to enable those future decisions. Clearly there are organizations across the sector that have their own interests. They've built up very specific capabilities, and those sorts of things do drive certain judgments and certain decisions, which are completely understandable. But in order to answer the questions that we're posing with this project in as objective way as we can, we need to give it independence from those individual organizations. So that's why ATI is going to host it. That's why we're going to pull together a team that has the freedom to go and explore the questions, to do the work, without having any bias. And then third, there is no single UK entity that combines all of the requisite capabilities. This is going to need such a diverse range of talents and skills to come together under one roof that it's hard to imagine any organization out there doing it and fulfilling it on their own. And of course, the ATI is ideally situated and positioned and set up to bring together these sorts of very wide-ranging collaborations. And we believe that the level of collaboration we're seeking in this work will produce even richer results by pulling on a diversity of skill and experience. And we'll come to this later in the presentation again. But the ambition here is to bring some challenge into the project from backgrounds that perhaps don't traditionally work in aerospace, but think differently and can work at a different pace to challenge the process.
Hi, I'm Simon Weeks, Chief Technology Officer of the ATI, and I'm going to tell you about the project structure and then give an overview of the project, how we're actually going to do it. So here's the project structure. You can see the high-level work streams, 5 in all. Firstly, project and business management. That stream will manage, in essence, the project delivery and operations. The sustainability work stream. Clearly, this project is aimed at net zero carbon. And so we want to ensure we have an account all the way through of how we're doing on net zero carbon. Strategy and commercial. That work stream will look at the commercial and the economic aspects of the project. If you like, the outcome and what will the downstream economic issues be. Will downstream zero net carbon aircraft be commercially viable? The technical work stream, very clearly, that will be concerned with looking at different air vehicle concepts, developing models, designs, evaluating those options, challenges, R&T gaps, the infrastructure needs, and then also looking at input into parallel academic program. Because clearly what we won't be doing as part of the project is the fundamental R&T that may be identified as being needed as part of that project. And then last but not least, manufacturing, life cycle and supply chain. Clearly any work that we do in terms of generating ideas for net zero carbon aircraft will have to be manufacturable in an economic sense, and therefore we do need to understand the manufacture, will there be production infrastructure requirements, and also through life needs and opportunities. So on to an overview now of the project. Very simply, it's got 3 steps to it. A study, initial study phase, followed by concept trades, and then the preliminary, if you like, more detailed preliminary design stage, which will get us an output from the project. So looking at the study first, what are we doing there? We're collecting and structuring all of the information that's known already. There's been a great deal of information published, lots of views on how to get to net zero carbon from aviation. We're going to pull that together and get that into a structure where that can be understood by the team. Then we'll down select ideas that we think are most appropriate and then carry out a concept trade study. So start to pull those ideas into views of aircraft systems, of aircraft themselves, what those aircraft might start to look like, the systems within them, how they might perform, How sustainable might they be? What sort of operational issues might there be? And do we have a view at that stage on the commercial and economic viability? And of course, there'll be some high-level technology roadmaps coming out. And then we'll do a further down select and go into what we call our preliminary design stage. Now, that might be one idea to go forward with in detail. It might be more than one. The project team will need to decide what's appropriate at that stage. But clearly, the whole idea of this preliminary design stage is to develop concepts into much more detailed definitions, detailed models, to really understand the performance of our net zero carbon aircraft in a great deal of detail, how sustainable they will be, the operational aspects, detailed technology roadmaps, and future demonstrator needs and future infrastructure needs. After all, this needs to go somewhere at the end of the day, and the next stage might well be major demonstrator projects as a result. The other aspect to explain here is a parallel academic program. We see the concept trade stage as already identifying a whole lot of research, fundamental research and technology needs, and it will be the job of the parallel academic program to go away and get some answers on those fundamental technology needs and bring them back in before the end of the overall FlyZero project. So really, to summarize this point, this part of the presentation, so what are the key questions that FlyZero answers at the output of those three steps? Well, firstly, what net zero carbon commercial airline is going to be the most likely in the 2030s? How many people will it carry? How far? How will it impact the air transport system? What are the economics going to be of it? And what does the UK need to do to be ready? What future technology acquisition do we have to do? What demonstrator projects do we need to do? What might we need to do to our air transport infrastructure? Whole range of questions there underneath those top, if you like, top level questions. Okay, that's all from me for now. I'm going to hand over to James for the next part of the presentation. Thank you.
So this is James McMicking, the Chief Strategy Officer of the ATI again. I'm now going to be talking to you about how to get involved in FlyZero. So what are we offering? We're offering the chance for secondees, whether they're from industry or academia or other organizations, to come and work with the ATI for up to 12 months in a highly collaborative environment. As I say, we're going to have a highly integrated team, bringing together a whole range of backgrounds to work together on this project. There are a whole variety of opportunities given the breadth of the task and at various levels of seniority and expertise in the project. So really, there's good opportunities for everyone out there. It represents an exceptional opportunity for personal development for individuals, but also the opportunity to contribute to groundbreaking research that will shape the future of aviation and the UK aerospace sector as well. And really, this is a critical point to make. This is a chance for organisations that are willing to second people in to make an important contribution to the sector's efforts and to the UK, and for secondees to go through an experience that will, without doubt, contribute to their development and help them in their future. To give a sense of what the team will look like, you can see an organisational chart on the page here, which obviously mirrors the work breakdown structure to some extent. So the idea is to have a dedicated project director, which we are already recruiting for, and you can see that position on the ATI website. And they will report directly to the ATI CEO. They will have full responsibility for the delivery of this project. The senior team around that project director then breaks down key elements of the work. So I'll start with the head of sustainability. We wanted to make sure that the sustainability challenge had dedicated expertise behind it and the ability to really challenge the work across the project. So that's that role there. And we're looking to really drive this project from the lens of sustainability, not just commercials or economics. Other key positions, the head of project and business management. This is a substantial undertaking. It's going to be fast-paced. So the ability to manage a project of this nature. And within that team, we're going to be obviously looking for project managers, those that can keep track of the work, update documentation, and really deploy best practices in lean and agile project management. That team will also be responsible for controlling requirements within the project and general operations. This is a small business, really, a small organization that's being created here in very rapid timescales. So it's an operational challenge as much as anything else. Then, very importantly, the chief engineer that will be overseeing a technical team covering a wide range of skills and experience, from highly architectural down to specific areas of system design, powertrain design, and structural design. So I won't go through all of the areas there, but you can see for yourselves the breadth of engineering experience that the project is going to be looking for. Head of strategy and commercial will obviously be looking at this through the business lens, being able to perform strategic market analysis is vital to understand the economics that are at work behind this type of aircraft within the sector that will make it viable. Those that are able to develop cost estimations for the development of the product, the development of the aircraft, the in-service costs associated with it. Of course, important to emphasize this is a hypothetical aircraft, but we want to drill into these issues because they're going to be important to determining whether they're viable or not. And then those that are able to assess the in-service operations, so whether that's from the perspective of the operator or the ground infrastructure, as examples of what we mean there. Head of production, life cycle and supply chain, so these will be folks that are obviously very experienced in the production system and with manufacturing technologies, with supply chain management experience, and that's really what's involved within that team. So we're looking at folks that are experienced with developing supply chain capability, are able to identify supply chain capability gaps and requirements, what the potential manufacturing technologies are that we want to use on this type of aircraft, again, where there are gaps, but also those that can identify some of the test and development infrastructure requirements of the project. And then finally, through life engineering services. So what are the maintenance implications of the technologies that the project is studying? What does that mean for the support of the airframe through its life? But we want to stretch that to really a full life cycle. So we want to look back, particularly from a sustainability lens, what are the raw inputs going into that aircraft? How do they differ to aircraft today? And what does that mean environmentally? And then finally, to highlight here the academic coordinator role, we obviously recognize that there's a whole field of academic research going on around the UK and capability there that could have important bearing on what is possible for FlyZero. So the academic coordinator will interface with that community and will look to scour that landscape for inputs to this project and work with academia to undertake really specific studies to deliver to this program. So now I'm going to talk about how the secondment will work. So as we've said, the opportunities for up to 12 months secondment into the ATI FlyZero project, and we want that to be on a full-time basis so people can become fully dedicated and focused on the delivery of this work. The ATI will cover the gross salary and national insurance costs associated with those individuals, plus any related travel expenses for fulfilling duties in the project. To engage, parent organizations should register their interest at flyzero@ati.org.uk email address, and they'll need to sign the ATI framework agreement as well. The reason we're doing that is because we're going to be exchanging detailed information between us, and we want to ensure that is handled under a confidentiality framework and in confidence. Parent organizations will then be sent a link to a dedicated FlyZero vacancy board and FlyZero HR portal. And from there, nominated representatives from those organizations can submit their individual applications for specific roles within the project, which will be detailed on that portal. And it's really that straightforward. We'll then oversee a sifting and selection process with the team as it develops, and that will be handled in really two major waves. So in effect, we've already started the process a little bit. So we are recruiting a project director at present and a few other key business administration roles to support the work. The next stage is to seek the first really 25 secondees to support the first phase of activity. And we want to do that in the 6 to 8 weeks following the go live with the HR portal. After that, we'll be looking to ramp up the team with a further 80 secondees about 2 months after the project has begun with the first 25. But we'll be looking to identify those individuals in parallel. So we won't wait until at the end of the first phase to go and identify and agree who those other secondees will be. We'll be working in parallel with the project team to support that process. The contribution agreement is effectively the framework, the contractual framework that ATI will use to support this with businesses, and that outlines the commercial terms by which ATI will support the costs of the secondees with the parent organization and other key issues around commercials and IP. So what are the next steps? Well, the ATI is planning to launch the secondment process within the next month. You can see some of the channels we'll be using to do that down below, so keep an eye out on our website, follow our Twitter account, subscribe to the ATI newsletter if you're not already. Start to think about where you or your organization could fit within the project. For an individual, talk to your organization about this unique development opportunity. It really is a fabulous opportunity for individuals and for organizations to support the development of those individuals. Companies should think about the extent they could support secondments in terms of the number of secondees and the talent they're willing to put in. And the project more broadly, really. A lot of companies will have great insight and capabilities that could be really valuable to the project and to the mission. Organizations should register their interest at flyzero@ati.org.uk email and sign the framework agreement as we covered earlier. And really at this point, do stay connected with the ATI and watch this space.
Great, thanks James. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Dave Debney. I'm Head of Technology for Whole Aircraft here at the ATI. We've now reached the part of the session where we're going to answer some of the questions that have been coming in through Slido. So again, just to remind everybody on the webinar, we're using Slido to ask questions. So you need to log into Slido on your laptop or your phone, and the number that you need to put in is 88744. And if you log in, you can vote questions up to the top. You can ask new questions, and that's the means that we'll be looking at this. Just looking at the list of questions we've had so far, the first question I think is probably worth jumping back to James because it follows on with what you were just talking about. You've outlined a broad timeline of events. The question is how these 100 secondees will be split roughly in terms of the key functions that we've shown in the webinar.
Okay, so a lot of them, of course, will be in the technical team. We'd imagine around 70 to 80 within that. If you look at the overall project, we've scoped out about 110, up to 110 people to join the project. And then other key areas will be around strategy and commercial and the industrial supply chain side as well, where we may need around sort of 10 folks within each of those teams. And then the project management function that I talked about earlier will need maybe half a dozen people in there. So that gives you a sense of the split. So of course, a lot of this is about analyzing the technology and doing a lot of modeling work. So the majority of the skills we're looking for will fall into that category, but we're taking a complete view of the challenge here. So the industrial skills and that team will be absolutely critical, as will the commercial folks looking at the market and how this sort of technology can fit into the future of the sector.
Great, thanks, James. Right, looking at another question on the list. Simon, I think we'll probably come to you for this one. The question is, for aircraft development, no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Will the project include the disruptive effect of smaller short-range aircraft in the marketplace, or is it focused only on larger, longer-range aircraft?
Thanks, Dave. Well, certainly, if you looked at the elements of the project, we're looking at yes, the technical side, also the market context, the economic context, and the impact on carbon emissions from the sector. And looking at it right now, the predominant amount of those emissions come from single-aisle airliners and wide-body airliners. And to us, going forward, and certainly in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that's the big problem the industry has to tackle. And so our focus is going to be on larger commercial airliners and what the solutions are there. Certainly what we're not going to do is ignore the smaller aircraft coming through, which I see as being totally new market opportunities. And so in that total market assessment, we'll need to see in terms of how the smaller aircraft fit in, what those markets might be in comparison to larger ones. What are the sort of realms of which zero net carbon technologies are appropriate for each of those, I guess you call them market sectors. Yeah, in essence, they'll be part of the mix, but I expect the technical focus to be on larger commercial airliners.
Just for clarity, Simon, for the audience, what sort of size, when you say large commercial airliners, what sort of size are you thinking?
Yeah, it will typically be looking maybe 80 seats upwards.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks. Just to clarify.
Yeah, so kind of larger regional aircraft and, the kind of larger, then up into sort of larger single aisle. And then also look at the longer term opportunities for wide body aircraft, although they're somewhat, I think, further off in the future.
Great, thanks, Simon.
Okay.
Okay, looking at the next question. I think this is a really good question, actually. James, we'll come to you on this one, please. The question is, established experts come with expert biases too. So how do we unleash truly creative thinking in the FlyZero project?
Yeah, it's a really good question, a really important one that we want to emphasize a lot here. We want to create a very diverse team of players, and we're looking outside the sector for some of that talent, specifically to come and challenge the process, if you like, to challenge the approach that aerospace typically takes in a positive and constructive way. So, this is a really ripe opportunity for some of the smaller disruptive organizations out there, either within the industry or outside the industry. I mean, for example, we've got a great Formula One sector that can work at a totally different sort of speed to a typical aerospace business. So that's the sort of thing we want to bring to bear here. And the task of the selection team is to piece together that organization so that at the end of it, we look at it and think this is going to really challenge what we typically do with a project like this as an industry. So yeah, really important question and something that we're looking to tackle, and that should take care of some of those biases. We're really conscious of that challenge, but it's something that we've designed into the approach.
Great, thanks, James. I guess following on from that, Gary, to come to you, the question we've got here is, isn't this just the ATI favouring the big companies again? So I think that sort of follows on from the last question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think James hit it on the head entirely there. We're looking for a diverse range of individuals and thinking, and to do that, we obviously need to have a broad selection of companies involved. And the big companies matter. They matter, but so do the small companies. And so do individuals. So this is very much about trying to select the very best team based on merit. So we're trying to put a process in place that really gets that fabulous team that will deliver this. My personal view is it obviously has its technical challenges, but when you put the very best team in, then you succeed, and this is really about that. So everybody's got the potential to be involved, and definitely not just the big guys. They are important, but it's definitely not just them.
Great, thanks, Gary. Coming to the next question, Simon. This kind of touches on some of the elements that you talked about in your segment. The question is, for aircraft development, 1 year is traditionally a very short time scale. So what delivery do we expect at the end of the project? How do we try and ensure the success, and what would we consider success at the end of the 12 months?
Okay, thanks, Dave. Well, clearly, what we're not trying to do, and let's clarify that message. We're not looking to produce an aircraft out of this piece of work. You'll have seen the kind of key questions that we're looking to answer. So we're looking to see what is the most likely commercial zero net carbon aircraft in the 2030s, and what additional does the UK need to do to be ready for that? What demonstrator projects do we need to launch downstream of this study? What companies we already know about do we need to encourage even more to come forward and develop their ideas and so on? So yeah, it will not develop a full aircraft. What it will do is take it's certainly one or even more designs to a reasonable level of detail. And what you tend to find is that once you get into a bit of detail on an aircraft concept, you start to find, and only then, a lot of the real issues that start to come out. And so that's the real intent, to really start to tease out some of the key technical issues that will be faced over the next, say, 10 to 15 years as we start to move towards zero net carbon flight.
Great, thanks, Simon. James, I'm going to come to you with this one. The question is, France and Germany have apparently similar programs. So will FlyZero explore the potential for international collaboration?
Well, with this particular project, we're really focused on creating that UK consortium in the initial instance, and really focused on the task at hand. But clearly, what we're laying out here is a long-term vision for the UK, and this is an industry that's been successful through international collaboration. And this project, I think, gives the UK a great position from which to open up some of those collaborations. So I think it's all the options are on the table from doing this. The specific project, though, we want to keep that focused. It's a high-paced project. It's a very ambitious task, but beyond that and around the bigger FlyZero vision, absolutely, we're talking internationally as ATI, as we always do, about how do we move this agenda on together, because the sector's got to crack the environmental challenge collectively. We can't isolate ourselves, and in fact, that collaboration's really critical, and we've always talked about that. So that's where I see it going. But the project specifically, we need to keep really, really focused on getting it delivered.
Yeah, great. Thank you, James. Okay, looking at, so we've had a few questions. Simon, I'll come back to you on the next one. Asking about whether FlyZero will focus on net zero carbon emissions, like we've heard from the government in their sort of 2050 target, or absolute emissions, or whether we're aiming for absolute zero, and how FlyZero is going to fit into that space.
The aim is net zero. Clearly, we would like to get to total zero is the absolute ideal. That may not be possible, and so net zero is the target. It gives us a little bit more opportunity to explore technical solutions.
Great, thanks, Simon. Gary, this is a good one for you. A question that we've often had when we've been engaging with various stakeholders. Could you elaborate on how the FlyZero project relates to the government's Jet Zero Council?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so without appearing to show off, I was invited to the Jet Zero Council launch a few weeks back, at which the Prime Minister spoke about his ambition to achieve some bold net zero carbon reduction, and so he's got completely bought into it. They see FlyZero as forming a key component of that. So what we conclude from this, as we've described so far this morning, will very much determine what the next phase is. So the Prime Minister is looking for moonshots, and one potential moonshot might be, as a result of this first-year study, right? So we might, as Simon outlined, determine that there is a single-point solution that does have an economic case, and we may look to pursue that. And I think just to add to some of James's question around international collaboration, the follow-on phase may well indeed involve that, and there's no reason why we wouldn't consider that. The aviation sector is very much a collaborative international supply chain, and I personally think there will be a moonshot. I mean, that's a sign of success for me, and if we can continue to have the Prime Minister involved, then that's super. So yeah, Jet Zero completely aligned with FlyZero. The two are the same in many ways. Thank you, Dave.
Great. Thanks, Gary. So got a long list of questions, which is good. Lots of interest from people out there. So James, looking at the next question, it's around micro companies where people might be kind of owner directors. There's a question around how they might be able to participate. Okay,
well, more or less like everyone else. So the predominant model we've laid out there is to second. So I guess it's feasible that you could second yourself into the project as a business owner, and so that is the core approach. If we think that we may hire individuals on say fixed term contracts to support the work, we'll advertise those posts on our website as and when they come up. But as I say, the core approach we're taking with the project is that secondment model, and that sets out the same terms for everyone in terms of what the program is going to support in terms of the costs associated with that.
Great, thanks, James. Simon, there's a question here on tool sets. Will secondees from industry be expected to learn and use ATI tools, or is there the possibility that we could use tools from their home company or elsewhere?
Well, we do have an ATI tool set, and we will be using some of those, but essentially that's based on commercial software. And so the principle is, where possible, we will use commercially available software. We will set up, the idea is to set up effectively an internet portal for the project, or web-based interface, which will allow the project team to access a whole range of tool sets. It may be that companies offer in proprietary tool sets, and this IT approach will actually offer the opportunity to allow those tool sets to run within that shared environment. But the idea is that it is a joined up team, and that they need access. The tools they will use will be open for the team to use, and indeed the data downstream of that, and that sort of kind of moves on to the how will we use the data generated from the project. It needs to be usable through reasonably standard commercially available tools and modifications that the project itself might do to adapt those tools for its use.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking at, there's another question here. Gary, I'll come to you on this one. So the question is, are there potential opportunities for graduate or entry-level engineers or other skill sets supporting the workload in FlyZero, or will it more be looking for highly experienced people?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, we're looking for a broad cross-section of people. I think the reality is, in this first phase, it will be predominantly those with experience. It's just kind of needs must, I suppose, given it's a quick fire 1 year feasibility approach. So what we will do, I think, as James outlined, there will be an opportunity for some direct applicants, and he mentioned the process on the website. You'll see those jobs outlined. I think the only other thing I would outline is, I'm very much looking to find the very best project director to deliver this. And once they're on board, they will have to have some form of flexibility. So, the team have outlined a lot of the thinking and the work that's gone on thus far. But I very much want the project director to feel as if they own that. And if they determine that they want to have more graduates fresh out of university, then I think we can accommodate that. So it's kind of work in progress. There will be opportunities. Keep looking at the website. But like I say, unfortunately, given the nature of the work, it will predominantly be those with a lot of experience.
Great, thanks, Gary. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the Q&A session. So just looking at one very brief question, I think I'll probably just address this one myself very briefly. The question is around how will the outputs from the project be disseminated? Will they be put back to industry and academia? And the answer is yes. And that's something that we're actively looking to do, to use the outputs from this project to put back into UK industry, UK academia, UK RTOs to help develop these kind of ideas. That's precisely the underlying ethos of FlyZero, to help push forward and signpost where we think the technology needs to develop in this key industry. So that's the end of the Q&A session there. I'd just like to add a couple of points at this stage. The first one is a reminder that the webinar recording will be available on the ATI website following this session. And in addition, there are a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get round to discussing in this Q&A session. So we will answer some additional questions in writing and post those on the website in the next few days. So watch this space. So thank you very much to all of the panelists, and I will now hand back to Gary just to give a sort of closing summary of where we are on the project.
Thank you. And thank you to the speakers, those of you who posed questions, and all of you who have listened patiently in. Just a final few words from me, if I may. This is an exciting and transformative project which has the potential to have a follow-on moonshot phase if we get it right. An outcome that would be great for sustainability, but also for industry and the economy. As I said at the beginning, it requires the very best possible team, and I'm afraid not everyone will be able to participate. But those who do will hopefully be embarking in what is only the very beginning of an exciting journey that will have lots of opportunity for expanded engagement in the near future. If you feel as if you can offer something as outlined during the presentation, then please follow up as was suggested. Finally, thanks for participating in the webinar, and very much the best of luck in the future. Thank you and goodbye.